This podcast may contain discussions of graphic violence, unsettling themes, supernatural phenomena, and other topics that some listeners may find disturbing or triggering. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only. The opinions expressed are simply those of the individual hosts and do not represent the profession of psychology or constitute professional advice. Welcome to the Secret Passage podcast.
Hello.
Yes, forgive any background noise of leaf blowers you might hear. Hopefully you won't. I have all the windows closed.
Oh gosh, yeah, and you'll probably hear stuff outside of my window too. Car crashes, screaming children, birds.
Car alarms.
Car alarms, yes.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Oh boy. Have you gone down any secret passages this week that were notable, Shannon?
Yes. I was thinking I could probably, all my secret passages could be about things that happen in my neighborhood on my street. Oh my God. It's like this one takes the cake. So I live, just for people, our listeners, I live in Oakland, kind of like not East Oakland. I guess they're calling it like Middle Oakland, but like Fruitvale, which is somewhat east. So I'm coming home from work on Wednesday and I turn the corner and I'm going toward my house. It's like two or three houses in, I think 3 houses in on the right. So it's on my right and I'm driving in my lane and I look ahead and there's this car coming from the other direction and it pulls right in front of me, like into my lane, blocks my driveway. And I'm like, what the fuck? And people do this all the time. They park weird. They block our driveway. I was like, this guy is parking backwards. I thought he was going to parallel park backwards. And so he stops the car, opens the door, and just stands there. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I look in the car, and there's a passenger in the car. And I just have this incredulous look on my face. And she's staring at me, and then she starts laughing super hard. And then I realize the guy in broad daylight is taking a piss on my driveway. And so, yeah, so they pull away, I pull in, and that's the end of the story. So, yeah, I was like, maybe it's time to move to the suburbs. Do you have stuff like that happen in your neighborhood ever?
Not in my neighborhood now. I have a lot of like police, military folk in my neighborhood. So no one's getting away with that shit in my neighborhood. Ugh. But you remember when I lived in Van Nuys? Mm-hmm. And I remember times when I would be coming home and the street would be blocked off because there was like someone with a gun running around. And the cops would be like, you're going to have to like go somewhere else for a while. And I'm like, but I'm tired. Mm-hmm. I'm so tired. And one time our building got evacuated because cops, they thought that people were making meth that lived directly next door to me. I think if you can talk to Tom Shannon, I'm sure he remembers that. That was exciting. But yeah, but it turned out no, I think they were just trying to grow pot or something. I can't remember. But it was just like, I was so jaded though. It was like, you know, when you just kind of, you're so used to things being fucked up.
Yeah.
You just take, yeah.
The city kind of grinds you down like that, yeah.
Exactly. And I remember at the time too, when the cops were like, you're going to have to go somewhere else. It was a time I didn't have money to like even go like get a room for the night somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like I was just driving around aimlessly and coming back to see if they had left yet. And eventually they did. It wasn't actually long after that. But yeah, shit like that would happen all the time. But not now. Fortunately.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
Did you go down any secret passages this week?
Yeah, nothing super exciting. I watched that movie, The Last Showgirl, that's starring Pamela Anderson. Had heard great things, fully expected to love it, and I didn't love it at all. I loved her, and I loved Jamie Lee Curtis. But I found the movie, I got curious, because after the Academy Awards, I finally watched Anora, the Sean Baker movie, which I'd been hesitant to watch just because I'm like very sensitive and yeah, you know what I mean? Like he's so great at accurately portraying lives of sex workers, and he's really good at sort of getting across like nuance and complexity and all that kind of thing. So I felt like it would kind of be a gut punch to watch Honora, and it was. But it inspired me to go check out The Last Showgirl. And I really found it to be, it took itself really seriously. The movie is about an aging showgirl, Las Vegas showgirl, played by Pamela Anderson, and it's her show is coming to a close because it was like a really long running show, and they have a new act kind of coming in that's like fresher and more, I don't know, it will be more appealing or whatever. And so it tries to explore a lot of things all at once, and I feel like with the kind of size of the movie, it's not a long movie at all. It needed to just stick with one thing, and it really, there were too many shots that I just pictured. Gia Coppola was the director. I'm picturing Gia Coppola just like thinking, oh, this is so beautiful, this is so it's so symbolic. And it's like Pamela Anderson like walking around and just staring up at the sky at like various points of Las Vegas, and I'm like, wow, she's got a lot of time on her hands. She just wants to go drive out and just stand there and stare at the sky. It's just corny. It was really corny. And I'm like, this is annoying. And then there's one part where Jamie Lee Curtis is just suddenly dancing to Total Eclipse of the Heart out of nowhere in the middle of the casino. And I'm like, what is happening? Oh, I get it. We're like, she's older. Her time as a cocktail waitress. She used to be a showgirl. Everything's happening, and she's sort of like in this moment. And I'm like, if she was having a nervous breakdown and doing this, it would be believable. But it happens, and it's never explained. Nothing comes of it. You don't know if she got fired from because she did that or anything. Or is it even really happening? So all these things are happening, and then they'll like touch on I think things worthy of further exploration, like Pamela like trying to get a fucking job after, she goes and she auditions, and she's kind of out of touch. Times have changed. But then it's like, yeah, it's too on the nose because the casting person is like, okay, no, I've seen enough. And of course, Pamela's dancing to Pat Benatar. And they're like, yeah, no, this isn't what we're looking for. And she's like, well, what are you looking for? And it becomes this whole thing. And then he goes, look, I'm sure you were hot at one point in your life, and that's why you were hired, but blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, again, they keep pushing it and driving that point home. You're older. You're no longer relevant. Like all the, it was really silly. But like, I'm like, either be about women being aged out of these positions, or the relationship between the fraught relationship between Pamela Anderson and her daughter, or about I don't know, like the dying industry of like topless, reviews or whatever. I don't know. It needed to kind of hone in on one thing and not also be so, they wasted so much time with her. Literally, I'm like, oh God, here she is again. Where did she drive to? Oh, she's standing in an abandoned parking lot, staring at the sky again. Why is this happening? It just, you know what I mean? It was like, it took
Too
itself
much.
way too seriously, thought that it was being really artistic. And I'm like, and it's such a waste because Pamela Anderson is great. I mean, she's great in this. And I hope it means more roles for her, because
Yeah.
she's actually incredibly There was never a moment when she was on screen that I didn't buy what she was doing or saying. You know, she's incredibly compelling. And then Jamie Lee Curtis is like so great. Like when isn't she? She's so good. So, but yeah, that was my kind of rabbit hole. I was weird though. I fully expected to love the movie, and I'm like, that was it.
Yeah, it
Okay.
sounds like it was like too much and too little, and
Yes.
I hate it when that happens. Or when you're watching something and you're like, this really needed an editor, like an extra editor. Like, yeah. Wow, because such potential, because they're both super compelling. I think that Pamela Anderson is just captivating. Like I could look at her face all day.
She I love that she has reemerged
Yeah.
and in this incredible way. And so much of it I think has to do with her being an incredibly earnest person. She's so, I don't know if you ever watched the documentary on her, but she's so lovable and genuinely sweet, and it's somehow she's managed to not be hardened or jaded by everything, by life. She's so sweet. And I love that she walks around without makeup. She's just like, fuck it, this is me. And I'm like, and it's so much better.
I
Like
know. I
she's
know.
stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope for her just a new, like a way into like more independent movies. I think she's got the chops. She really, she holds her, she, every moment she has, even when I'm like annoyed at the movie, I'm like, but her, she's great. So that's my kind of assessment of the movie. I'm sure there's plenty of people that would disagree with me. I just yeah, I don't know. But speaking of movies,
I know. I was like, speaking of chops.
speaking of Ernest, no. Well, I think we could say that we both earnestly love the horror movie genre.
Yes. And specifically these two movies.
Yeah, which I have. Oh, this is so great. I'm so excited because after we talked about The Substance and Promising Young Woman, which Promising Young Woman isn't a horror movie, but still The Substance is a horror movie. I love talking about movie, and I love being able to kind of anytime there's a way to get into the scholarship of the horror movie genre, I'm excited. But yes, we are talking about two Eli Roth movies, my favorite two Eli Roth movies, Hostel 1 and Hostel 2. And I remember seeing Hostel 1 in the theater in 2006 when it came out. When did you see Hostel?
I don't remember. I think I saw it pretty. I never saw it in the theater. So I think I saw it actually later than when it came out. I can't even remember. I was late actually to this whole subgenre of quote unquote torture porn, which I think is totally dismissive, and I don't think this is really that. But
Right.
I was kind of late to it, and had to kind of adjust because I wasn't into like hyper gory, hyper violent stuff. I mean, I like stalker slasher
Sure.
films, but there's a different element to this sort of captive thing,
Right.
captive torture, like the unflinching nature of stuff like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we'd covered this a little bit in our last movie kind of podcast about how, you know, horror itself is a serious form of cultural commentary. And I think that Hostel 1 and Hostel 2, I think, do an excellent job of putting that forth. And I know Eli Roth has gotten a bad rap. I feel like he's not taken as seriously
Mm-hmm.
as a director, and he's sort of written off as kind of, yeah, being all about just the spectacle, the torture porn, and and he is kind of a dude bro and into hot women being hurt and senseless violence for no reason. And I think that Hostel 1 and Hostel 2 couldn't be further from that. I mean, they're objectively they're disgusting and gross and upsetting, but that's horror. And
Yeah, and
it's
basically in Hostel 1, it's the guys that get chopped up.
ultimately, yeah,
Yeah.
ultimately, these movies are a lot more, I think, subversive, a lot more culturally relevant. They were then, and they are, I think, even more now, which is why we're talking about them. So, for anyone that hasn't seen Hostel 1 or 2, the breakdown is this. Hostel 1, uh, it's takes place on a European trip. These friends, this group of friends, Paxton, Oli, and Josh, they're backpacking through Europe, and they meet up with someone who recommends to them going to Slovakia, that the women are just great there, and it's really, really cheap, and it's really, really fun, and there's a great hostel they can stay in. And so they agree to make the trip. And at that point, they were just kind of partying, smoking pot, going to. I think there's one scene where they're in I think the red light district, having sex with hookers, blah blah blah. And then they make their way to this village in Slovakia, in this hostel that it's like unbelievable. These gorgeous women, gorgeous women, and clubs to dance in and all kinds of stuff. And then slowly but surely, they start disappearing. And it's just Paxton who's like the main character. And he's trying to figure out where his friends are. And at the same time, there's a Japanese tourist named Yuki who is also, she's confused, like, where are our friends? And then it turns out that there is a sort of an industrial compound on the outskirts of town where these backpackers are taken and essentially auctioned off to the highest bidder of rich people from all over the world that come to this place where they can torture and kill. And so that is, we sort of see the reveal that the guy, the desk clerk, will take the passports, send scan them, send the pictures off to this organization, who then sends them out to these different people bidding on, essentially on the heads of these different tourists. So it looks like Americans are the most sought after.
Yeah, it's whether because they love us or they hate us, it's not clear.
Yes,
But
exactly. They, there is a certain value placed, and then the hostel is sort of like it's sort of like the farm, right? So these people come in, they innocently hand over their passports, they're having fun, and then they're kind of like grabbed up, drugged, what have you, taken to this place, imprisoned, and then the wealthy elite come in and act out their fantasies of torture and murder. And so Paxton, these beautiful girls that he's been partying with are part of this organization of like, they're the kind of like the local kind of enforcement. They're the ones that lure the tourists, and all that. And he finds his way to the industrial kind of compound, and from there sees what happened to his friends, realizes that what exactly is going on, manages to escape, manages to rescue kind of Yuki, who has been imprisoned and has her eyeball hanging out of her head.
that one's Kana.
Oh, Kana. Who's Yuki?
Yuki's the one who disappears. She's the first one that gets killed. And no, I know. I only know that because I was reading an article last night because I couldn't keep them
Thank
straight
you.
in my mind. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, let me scratch that. It's Kana. Okay, Kana. And then the movie ends with Paxton getting revenge on this Dutch businessman who was one of the torturers who killed his friend, who was also someone that they met early on in this bizarre kind of exchange on the train.
He was eating salad with his fingers. And in one of my favorite lines, they call him Edward Salad Hands.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
Do you remember this weird cartoon that was on like YouTube called Salad Fingers?
No.
Okay, look it up. Look it up. It'll give you nightmares. It's this
Okay.
really creepy character named Salad Fingers,
Oh,
and he loves rusty spoons. It's really creepy. But anyway, and Paxton kills him, and in this really gruesome way, and then that movie ends. And what I love about Hostel 1 is it sets the tone for Hostel 2. Hostel
Yeah.
2, if I had to choose between the two movies, Hostel 2 is my favorite.
I like Hostel 1 the best, but both are so good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Hostel 2 picks up with Paxton not being able to escape his fate. He is hunted down and killed, presumably by the head of the organization.
Well, first he wakes up in the hospital. Remember that? That was the best part.
I
He
thought
wakes
that was
up-
his dream, though.
Yes, it was a dream. And then we were so relieved that it was a dream. And then he gets hunted down and then his head gets cut off. And then remember when she goes into the kitchen and the cat is like eating his neck stump?
Right. Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah. I am horrified. I'm imagining myself with a head stump and the cats that I love so much just sort of having their way with the innards of my neck. Like, thanks, guys.
Yeah, they hunted him down. I didn't know they had those kind of skills, but yes, that's
Of course they do, though, because it's like there's that kind of that moment where we understand how much money you actually have to be a part of the elite hunting club, which is the name of this organization.
perfect name.
It is, and so then we have kind of like the female counterparts to Paxton and company from the first movie. We have Beth, who's like stunningly beautiful. That actress, I've never seen her. I haven't seen her in anything since, but I just found her really, really beautiful. The actress's name is Lauren German, but Beth is like our main character. And then her two friends, Whitney, who's like very sassy, and then Lorna, who's kind of homely and innocent.
You know who that is? It's Dawn Wiener.
From
Welcome to the Dollhouse.
Welcome to the Dollhouse, yes. Yes. And she was in the
perfect.
Princess Diaries, too.
Oh,
She was like, I think she was like her character was friends with Anne Hathaway. I'm not sure. I could be
I never
wrong.
saw it, but I love her.
Yeah. She's so great. She's so great in this. And I feel like, oh man, it's
She
so
dies
brutal.
in the best way. The
worst way.
Yeah.
So they are art students who befriend a nude model named Svetlana, who is like the nude model for their art class. She invites them to go to Slovakia to have like a spa vacation after they are on a train and sort of being treated poorly by the men on the train. Right. They were originally just on their way to go on a trip somewhere, and then she kind of redirects them. Svetlana does after they have a bad run-in with these guys that are trying to hit on them.
Yeah. Svetlana was the one in the first one. I think this one's Axel.
Axel, that's right.
Yeah.
Fuck. Sorry.
And I thought they were the same person. I had to double. I was like, is that the same woman? Because I thought, yeah. But, right.
It's
they
Axel.
were on
Okay.
Yeah. Axel, I think. I don't
Axel.
know. Axel. And she's beautiful and she looks like Svetlana. Yeah, I forgot where they were going, but she basically kind of lured them to Slovakia by telling them that it would be like, they have these hot springs there and
No
that it would be-
dudes.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then guess what? They end up at this same hostel. And it is at first absolutely great. They're having the best time. They have this great moment where they go to like a festival in the town, which is
So good.
it's so good. And it kind of in some ways mirrors there were so many nods in Hostel 1 to horror. Like they stay in room 237, which is like a nod to room 237 in The Shining. There's Paxton he keeps thinking he sees Oli or Josh, and he's kind of trailing, and it reminds me of Don't Look Now, where there's like the kind of it like labyrinth tunnels of like Venice and all these different things. He's like looking for him. And in Hostel 2, we have that when Beth is looking for Lorna, and she's just like trying to make her way through this crowd of people in weird masks and costumes. And it's like it sort of foreshadows her kind of like trying to find her way, out of like the nightmare of the elite hunting club. But yeah, everything turns out great. But what I love about Hostel 2 is we see the other side. We see the other side because we see kind of how it works. We see the desk clerk at the hostel taking their passports, scanning the pictures, sending it off to the guy in charge of the elite hunting club, who then sends it out with like starting prices. And you see like this wealthy equestrian woman like taking her phone and like looking and like placing a bid. It shows it's so disturbing because it shows like men with their families going and like they're looking, and you see that they're all kind of people of exorbitant wealth. And then we meet Stuart, who is this kind of downtrodden husband of a family in a very middle class home, and his buddy Todd calls him up to say, hey, we're doing it, we're going on this trip. And Stuart is sort of like grudgingly like agreeing to it. And so we kind of see how the operation works. And then we see poor Lorna get, she thinks she's met this guy that likes her, and he just like conks her over the head, and she wakes up suspended upside down and just flayed by this woman who fancies herself as like a modern day Elizabeth Bathory bathing in Lorna's blood.
It's a literal bloodbath.
It is. It's a literal bloodbath. And then we see Beth worried about Lorna, but Whitney and Axel are not particularly concerned. But we know from the beginning to not trust Axel. I think that's the thing is we know that she is not to be trusted because we've seen Hostel 1. We know what's going on. And then Whitney is then kidnapped, and then Beth meets Stuart, who knows her name because Beth was chosen for him by, I guess, Todd in the bidding. Stuart is at the festival, and he meets her. And at first, I don't know if you had this, at first I thought that Stuart was just a conflicted guy who is actually nice. He's one of us, he's just a regular schmo. He's not, just ridiculously wealthy and cocky. He's actually kind of humble.
He's like the wimpy, anxious one, and the other guy is just like macho,
on cocaine, fucking just a total finance dude, just shitty and awful. And Stuart seems hesitant, which I thought was very clever, because when the tables turn, it's a little like, oh shit, But he meets Beth, and then in my head, I'm like, oh, he maybe later on they're going to join forces. Maybe he's a good guy. Mistake number one. So she escapes. Like they're chasing her, and she's at the spa. She's fallen asleep. She escapes, is picked up by Axel, I think, and put into the back of a car. And she thinks that Axel's her friend still. And it reminds me a little bit of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when at first the girl thinks that the dude picking her up in the truck is her friend. Oh, it was going to help her, and then takes her right back to the house with the crazy people. But so that's what happens. Axel picks her up, takes her back to this mansion, and she realizes that in this mansion, all the decapitated heads, including Paxton's.
Yeah, she walks into that walk-in closet, and they're all there in a little
display
horseshoe
case.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, oh shit. And then she is drugged and, wakes up in chains, sitting in this chair. And Stuart is supposed to be the one that's gonna hurt her. But in the meantime, Todd, Stuart's douchebag finance bro buddy, is having the time of his life tormenting Whitney. And then when he manages to saw through part of her head, gets super grossed out, can't finish, and loses his shit, and he doesn't want to do it. And he takes off, and he's like, I'm done. I don't want to do this. And they're like, yo, you can't leave here until you kill her. You cannot leave here. And then you start to understand kind of what the terms of service are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he can't bring himself to do it. So they sick the dogs on him, and the dogs eat him alive.
Since she's still kind of alive, they bandage her head up, and then they start going around and knocking
At a
on
discounted
doors.
rate. Yeah.
Yeah, to discount her. Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, hey, look what just became available at a discounted rate. And Beth comes to, and Stuart is there, and she is pleading with Stuart for help. Stuart is down to help her, but then he conks her in the head because he suddenly is like, fuck this shit. And you realize he's like he's like an incel, kind of like. She insulted him, I think, at the thing. She sort of inadvertently insulted him.
Well, he goes and kills the other girl. I think that's when he gets like kind of all
But
punked.
isn't it?
Or is that...
I think at first he.
Oh, I know. She's like talks him into having sex with her. And then he's like, okay, get on the floor. And that's when she, like, it all goes down between the two of them.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what came first. Like, because I think he does he like changes, and then they come to the door with the picture of Whitney, and then he's like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna go do this thing, and God knows we never see it. We never see it.
He goes in there, and then he kills her, and then he comes back.
Right, and he's like telling her about how he fucking killed her friend.
Yes.
And then she bops him in the head. She like, she, what is that called again when you...
Headbutt.
Yeah, she headbutts him like when he's trying to rape her. And then she has the scissors on his dick.
And then she starts,
she's yelling for the guy to come in, the head of the organization. They come in. She's like, yeah, well, oh yeah, because Stuart spills the beans as far as like, this is a hunting club. This is what's going on. So she knows, like, this is a thing where these people are hunting us, and it's rich people.
Yeah.
And she's like, I want to buy my way out of here. And they're like, you can't afford it. She goes, yo, I could fucking buy all of Slovakia. And they're like, in that case.
Yeah.
And then she cuts the guy's dick off, Stuart's dick off.
Because she has to murder someone. And then she says, I forget what she said. She's like, let him bleed to death.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
she's like, just let him bleed to death. And then she gets the hound tattoo, because that's the other requirement, is you have to get a hound tattoo.
She also throws his cut off penis to the dogs, and they eat it.
Yeah.
So many good moments.
There's
in this
so
movie.
many good moments. And then
like nod to you, like, we love you, viewers. Like, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she gets the tattoo, and then she goes and she finds XL and chops her head off. As revenge, because XL fucking basically made this whole, or orchestrated this whole thing with her and her friends. Sorry if that was disorganized, but that's the summary of Hostel 1 and Hostel 2. And what really comes up for me with these movies, and what I think is so great, is like, we didn't get a chance to really talk about it, and the substance would have been a great place to sort of talk about, like, the concept of the abject and abjection, which is, the abject is basically like this kind of like philosophical idea that it explores elements that disturb our sense of order and identity by like provoking fear and disgust. And so like you'll see the abject manifesting through like bodily transgressions, body horror, which of course the substance is like filled with that. And this is also filled with all kinds of like fluids and blood and decomposition and all that kind of
Vomit.
stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of like I think of it too as just like so much like incongruity. And the thing that stood out for me is like in Hostel 1, and where I just think that Eli Roth did such a great job of like setting the tone and the space and the environment, is like this guy just sort of like whistling like he's working, I don't know, like on a farm or at on an assembly line or something, and he's just kind of whistling. He's bored, but he's like handling dismembered body parts, human body parts. He's just like tossing them onto a cart and like wheeling them along. He's like, drops something. It's a finger, he picks it up, you know. And that kind of like incongruity of like a bored whistling guy, and we're familiar with that kind of energy disposition, but he's handling dead bodies.
Yeah.
And that was really, I think that's a good example of just like it disturbs our sense of like order. Of like what is this? And then also the idea of you know the hunter and the hunted, like people hunting people, is an idea that is, when you see it demonstrated, is disturbing.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw this, it reminded me of The Most Dangerous Game. And that's a short story about a big game hunter who is hunted for sport by like a Russian aristocrat.
Yeah.
And there's like all these references in that story to the hounds and a
Hmm.
pack of hounds. And it's to me like there are all these little Easter eggs in Hostel and all these
Yeah.
references, like you talked about Room 237, the fact that they get the hound tattoos, the fact that it's like so much about the hunter and the hunted. And these guys look like they're going out on their vacation, to basically to get laid, to the hunting women, and
Right.
they end up being the hunted. And then in the end, Paxton ends up being the hunter again when he kills the Miss Edward Salad Hands and the toilets. Um,
It's so funny because I was like looking through again like the Julia Kristeva book, which it's so funny because it's abjection, you know, essays, you know, the powers of horror, you know, essays on like objection, and I'm like the essay is a book. I mean, it's a
yeah.
book, and she's incredibly academic, and so like some of the ideas are like you have to go through and reread and reread and reread
Yeah,
some
I don't
stuff.
quite understand. Like, I remember like ripping apart my Lacan book. Like at the end of we had like a film theory course and like wanting to burn it, but it wouldn't burn. Like I couldn't stand it. And like with the abject, it's a very hard for me to understand. Like I understand that it's trying to. At least it seems like it's trying to make sense of what we get out of watching horror. And I'm like, yeah, so what's the phenomenology of like when you have an experience of the abject in film? It's like an experience that you feel, right?
Right.
Like,
It's the revulsion, it's the
yeah.
horror, it's the fear. And then I think what Kristeva tries to do is she tries to like really get even deeper into the core of it. So
Mm-hmm.
like she defines objection as like as a psychological like mechanism that it happens when like someone experiences a breakdown of like a sense of meaning and sees something that like threatens like their sense of self, or like
Mm-hmm.
boundary blurring, like
Like
when you're
self and object.
exactly when you're confronting elements that are super disruptive. Here a good example, I think, I don't know if I brought up Joel Peter Witkin when we talked about the substance or not, but he's a photographer, and I don't know if are you
Yeah.
familiar with him?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you know, like he does this thing where he will have like something like a decomposing head, but it's like surrounded by flowers. Right. So
Yeah.
these it's the incongruity, and it makes you so uncomfortable, almost like a liminal space.
Yeah.
that makes you it's or the uncanny valley. Like I think the uncanny valley is a really good example of like abjection
Yeah,
because
that
it's
makes more
disruptive.
sense to me. Yeah.
And so I think where the abject is really clear for me is like the fear of someone being bored and just going about their job, but their job is picking up dead, mutilated human bodies.
Like it's mundane to them.
Like it's
Yeah.
mundane. It's less about the bodies themselves or even the man. It's the fact that the man is bored by the dead bodies.
Yes.
Or the cannibal in Hostel 2 who's like listening to classical music and he's like cutting off bits and pieces of like the screaming, suffering man's leg and taking it over to his beautiful dining table and just calmly eating.
Yes. Do you know who that is?
Who is that?
That's a cameo of the guy who directed Cannibal Holocaust.
Oh geez, how perfect. Dude,
Isn't that
Eli
great?
Roth.
I
Dude,
know.
he's it's that's the thing is like you can watch his movies and you come back to this again and again. So I think that is where it really hits as well, like with the abject. And it comes up like so there's those kinds of images that convey that. And you know what it reminds me of? I had this boyfriend when I was in college, and we would be like out walking and stuff like that. And there was this one time where there was a dude who only had one leg. And I can't remember if he was like in a wheelchair. I'm sure he was in a wheelchair. And he only had one leg. And my boyfriend was like, oh, like he was disturbed. He was like so disturbed and he had to look away. And I was like,
Mm,
what's the problem? And he goes, that guy only has one leg. I'm like, so? Like, I'm like, have you been living on this earth for like we were like 19 for like the past
mm-hmm.
19 years? Like, are you telling me you've never encountered somebody who's like missing a part of their body? And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, it's just weird. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
weird. There's
I
supposed to be
see.
two legs and there's only
Yes.
one. And for him, it was so disruptive and disturbing and freaked him out.
This is so interesting because I feel like with horror, I have those experiences. Like, but what attracts me to horror is not that particular experience.
Sure.
It's more empathic. Like my experience is more like the most horrifying thing to me about these movies is that you have these people who are just confidently going out into the world and they're just like lambs to the
Yeah.
slaughter. Like just by making ordinary basic decisions with an ordinary level of confidence and they are like they realize how powerless and vulnerable they are and they become prey. You know, to me that's like, but it's so just like concrete and like human. And when I start getting into like the abject stuff, I'm like, I feel like I can't quite get it. Like I'm like it's heady and I'm like what does it actually like translate to in like your experience of a horror film? And I think that's kind of what it's trying to capture, right? Is like an experience and like one of the things that draws us to experiencing horror, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, when I was little and I would watch horror, I think I enjoyed being scared
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, right? So there's a little bit of that kind of it's fun. And
Mm-hmm.
also I think I enjoyed watching something I wasn't supposed to be watching. So there's the taboo
Ah.
aspect of it. And as I've gotten older, my interest in horror has changed, you know, and what I want is to be surprised on some level that isn't, jump
Mm-hmm.
scares or uh
Yes, like
yeah.
right, like the whistling when he's scooping up the body parts and throwing them into the crematorium and like it's totally ordinary, but it's really this heinous, disgusting
Yeah,
thing.
it's I think because horror has elevated so much over time,
Mm-hmm.
and I think also we discussed a little bit the Gothic in when we were talking about the substance and stuff like that, and how the Gothic was like, it was a reaction to the Enlightenment, and just the insistence really that like you can't always, not everything comes down to logic and reason, because the age of reason is, something where we really relied on kind of, we're a species, we're an elevated species, we have logic and reasoning, this is how we go about, this is how we think. And it's like, no, there's some things that simply defy logic and reason, and that is sort of like what the Gothic kind of brought to pass, like things that just don't fucking make sense, or just are confounding. And so there's something with horror, and essentially that's I think what I mean, and that's what the abject, I think, brings about too, with the idea of transgression, the blurring of gender, the blurring of power, the blurring of how in Hostel it is clear who has the power. It is the rich have the power and the poor do not,
Yeah.
and that
That's
the rich get to live and the poor do not.
yeah.
And then with Hostel 2, we have this transfer of power where, first of all, you have Beth, who is in a position of powerlessness, and she's like called a cunt, and she's called a bitch, and she's called all of these things by Stuart. But then who has the fucking power? And she cuts off his fucking dick, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, oh, I'm sorry, man who thinks that he is better than I am because he's a dude or whatever. I'm gonna castrate you. I'm gonna take your dick off. I'm taking your power away. And that is exactly what she does. But even more than that, she has more money than he does.
Yeah, and the only reason, I mean, the other part that's really interesting about that is that because of her behavior and choices,
Yeah,
they didn't understand that she was one of them. And so
exactly.
she got lumped together with the with the lower class people they were picking off, and she actually wasn't. She actually had money and
Yes.
could buy her way out. And that whole part about her dad, like you can see the fork in the road, which is so interesting about these, like in terms of the choice points in these movies. And her dad was like the alternate title for Hostel 2 could have been like, we should have stayed at the Four Seasons, because at one point, like her dad
That's where they
offered to,
wanted to.
yeah, and then she didn't want to because she was trying to blend in with the poor,
Right.
or the regular people. And then but ultimately what saves her is that she's super wealthy. And
It's the only thing that saves her. And that's terrifying.
yeah,
It's the
and
only thing that fucking saves her life, is that she
exactly.
could buy her way out. And again, that comes back to this idea that was so relevant, that stood out to me. And I remember, and I told you, I used to message Eli Roth on MySpace, and I was like, I'm sorry, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but given kind of where we are with like our defunct, horrible healthcare system and all of these other things, like it really feels like you're saying something here. And he goes, oh no, these movies were always more subversive than people really recognized. He was making a point. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's
Yeah,
the real horror of the movie for
exactly.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, the real horror is, that there could be that divide in order to kill like there's a great example in Saw. Hostel. I always get them mixed up. I literally was looking at my notes and I wrote Saw 2 instead of Hostel 2. They're like blended together forever in my mind. So the part where Paxton, first of all, in the first, we should talk about these themes. Okay, but I'll make this one point. So Paxton, Ollie, and Josh, they start out as like total dude bros. You think they have no layers, but then as it goes along, you start to see that Ollie's a dad. He's been through a divorce. Paxton speaks to, German. Josh is kind of like potentially closeted, maybe gay. I don't know, but he has suffered heartbreak. So they have layers, and you start to like them more, and you see them more as people. But Paxton, when he gets like held down in the chair and the person's going to kill him, when he starts speaking to that person in their language, he pauses because he can't bring himself to kill him, because he can see him as maybe like a human, like one of him.
That's right.
And then he puts the ball gag in his mouth. And
Right.
then, but it's like you have to dehumanize people to that degree to do that to them. It's sort of And it just speaks to, I mean, there's so much about class in these movies, and so much about power and privilege. And there's like the eat the rich element. There's also like what the older generation is doing to the younger generation in a way, because most of the people who were killing them were like older rich people.
They are
Like,
all older and wealthy. Yeah.
I'm looking at you, boomers. But it's called Elite Hunting. I also think it's really cool that the name of the film is like a clever homophone, like
Hostel.
hostel.
Yeah.
It's just, and so yeah, so it's like there's that piece. I like talk about like social anxieties and horror being a mirror for social anxieties. You have like the class piece. You have the sort of like, oh, we're setting out on this adventure, young and open-minded and wanting to have fun, and then boom, it's like the exact opposite. Then you have like, back then was like, those were the war on terror years. And those were the years there was like the Iraq War, there was like Abu Ghraib, there was
Yeah.
Guantanamo Bay, there was the beheading of journalists, there was 9/11. All this
There
stuff
was
was
the
happening.
economic collapse too
Yeah.
in 2008.
Yeah. And so, like, I think the movies really, because in our psyche at the time, I think that's the first time like waterboarding was in the papers all the time. And we were like really confronted with the horrors of this kind of torture in real life.
Yes, and it reminds me of also God, what was it I was reading or watching, but it brings to mind like the movie Last House on the Left, which was made in 1972, and it heavily references the Vietnam War. Um, like so that's we were I was like just born, but graphic depictions of like torture were like showing up. Like there was news footage that was so shocking and just so
Yeah.
it really fucked also with our sense of national identity
Yeah.
and like but like you would see like the graphic depictions of torture and stuff like it's like a metaphorical reflection, and like Wes Craven was like no stranger to like using horror as a way to kind of express like like our kind of national anxieties of the
Yeah.
time. And I think you're right. Hostel 1 and 2 are doing the same thing.
Yeah. And, I think that we see that often in horror, how it evolves. Like it's pretty new that we have these, I guess it was 70s, like the nameless, faceless, contextless, like stalker slasher that's just like a machine, or
Yes.
even, yeah. It's, and you can see how that's connected to social experiences, and then
Hmm.
as an expression of the anxieties around those. A lot of people talk about Hostel as though it's like xenophobic. I don't necessarily think that's true. That wasn't my experience, that
That
they were,
wasn't my experience either.
yeah, but a lot of people talk about that. But yeah, it's interesting to think about just what was, yeah. So I don't know what feels important to talk about in terms of like, there's so many different themes and angles. Like you think about the kids, the street gang, they,
Poverty. It's like
yeah.
also just how terrifying poverty is and how poverty can kill you. The kids, they pop up in Hostel 1. That's where we see them. And at first it's almost funny because they're little and
Mm-hmm.
they're very aggressive and demanding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then
By the way, those are locals that play those kids.
of
Like,
course they were so good though. They were so good.
yeah, yeah,
But you look at what they're willing to do for chewing gum.
yeah. Everyone has a price, and
And then in Hostel 2, they're not beholden to anyone. It's whoever's going to give them what they want or need, they are of service to.
yeah,
So, the way that the guy that's in charge of the elite hunting club is, he seems to sort of arbitrarily decide to kill one of the kids, and then the rest of them scurry off without any kind of emotional reaction. I think that really it really illustrates also just the horror of poverty. These are poor kids who are just trying to survive, and in some way, the locals that are taking part in this elite hunting club, they're not rich.
no,
You know that.
it's just their industry. It's just their bread and butter.
Yeah,
There's a sociopathic angle, like
yeah.
like, right, like a survival, like not really dissociation, but like, oh, what is it, like like a callousness, like a sociopathy. Like, we don't it's like, I got my price, like we'll hurt you unless you pay us off. And the kids, they have
Yeah.
their, you know and yeah, it's just like it's kind of a brutal. It kind of I was thinking about this, and I was like, if we go with the whole animal versus human thing, right? Like, or dehumanizing people so you can just shoot them like game, or kill them. Like,
Sure.
it's like, I was thinking about the whole village as like, it's just like I mean, it's just like industrial farming or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
that where you bring these sheep in and you mutilate them, and that's how you make your money. The whole economy of that entire village was based on this. Everyone was
Which,
involved.
if we're gonna really kind of relate it to things, look at the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
You go there for a vacation, you stay at a resort in this very, very poor area,
Yeah.
and you're counting on tourism as a way to survive. Like you look at any of these sort of like poor places.
I know it's a deal with the devil.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, there are a lot of layers of horror, and then also what's so interesting with the way that Hostel 2 ends is she beheads Axel, and then of course there's that really horrifyingly funny image of the kids playing soccer with Axel's head.
Yeah. That gets at the like desensitization sociopathy angle, like, right?
Yeah.
It's so grim, like it becomes a plaything.
Right, and it sort of like gets to the idea too of like when we become the abject, right?
Yes.
We delight. It is way too satisfying to see Beth get her revenge on Stuart. Like
I love this.
it's too good. I am clapping. I'm so happy that she does that and that she beheads Axel, and like the kids are celebrating. Like, well, they're not celebrating. They're just like, it's whatever. That's the sad thing. They're like, play soccer with her head, you know.
Yeah, and like, that's the piece that is so I love so much about a good horror movie, is that it's always playing with us in that way. Like, in
Yeah.
terms of the voyeurism aspect and like the meta stuff that happens in these movies.
Yeah.
Like, I can't, but of course it has the obligatory assault on the eye when, like, poor Kana, like, it's all fun and games till Kana loses an eyeball.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
how he cuts off her dangling eyeball. And that's sort of like a nod to us as the viewer, that we are sitting there enjoying this voyeurism of ours, like this, watching this torture and pain. And there's something like, oh, there was another. Oh, they go to a torture museum within the
That's
movie,
right.
and and then there's the assault on the eye. There's another really good moment where, well, that moment where they're kicking the head around, right? It plays with you. You kind of have to check your own impulses and your own, like, your own sort of, well, it's like your sense of justice in a way, right? But yeah, it's
Our own,
you're a
yeah, our own.
participant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the great thing about horror too, is it forces the viewer to be complicit in a way, either as victim or perpetrator, or when the victim becomes the perpetrator, which again, when we talk about like blurring an identity with the end of Hostel 2, we're left with the question, she bought her way out. Part of the contract is she has to kill. She did, right? She gets the tattoo. And then she goes and she kills Axel. And so the question is, who is Beth now?
I thought she might have bought the town and she's the boss of the kids.
Maybe.
Because they were responding to her like they were to the guy that
But
was the head of
they'll
the...
do anything for a pack of
That's
chewing
true.
gum. So
That's true.
like that's made clear early on. They're beholden to no one. It's whoever's
Yeah.
going to give them what they need in the moment. So I think it's left up to us to kind of figure out. But like one of the things that came up, and why Hostel 1 and 2 like popped into my head recently, is just everything that's coming out. Like, so we've known for a long time. It's like if you're rich, you get to live. If you're poor, you'll die, right? But
Mm-hmm.
also with like all of this like Bohemian Grove, the freak offs, parties,
Epstein.
Epstein, the elite, like how depraved are these people? It's not so far fucking removed. Maybe not as graphic, although who the hell knows, as, the elite hunting club, but it really, I don't know, just it's a thing where we would hear things and go, ha, crazy conspiracy theory. And then we're like, wait a minute.
Oh my God, I know he got this idea from a thing he read on the dark web about murder vacations in Thailand, where you can like, people were like selling their family members so that people could go on a vacation in Thailand and shoot them. That was the ex, yeah. Yeah, no, I know. It's and Eyes Wide Shut, and my friend's dad went to Bohemian Grove, by the way, and I know nothing about his experience, but he did used to go.
Used to go as in more than once?
Like back in the day, like in the 70s.
Okay.
Bohemian Grove. He was like part of the, I think he's probably a Freemason. I don't know.
Wow, that is wild.
But right, like money can buy you anything, and like this movie is so much about like our carnal, like our pursuits of pleasure and carnal pleasures and the things, the lengths we'll go to for that kind of, I guess, thrill. But yeah, like what will the rich, where will they stop?
Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me there was an interview with a celebrity. I want to say it was Brad Pitt. I don't know where I read this or heard this somewhere. I could be wrong. Maybe it's a different celebrity, but I do remember hearing this thing where he was describing how the thing with money and a degree of power, right, that celebrity gives you, that he didn't like. He would catch himself sometimes being a dick, being
Mm.
dismissive or being demanding or treating people poorly. And he'd catch himself, and he didn't like that. That's sort of like what that you have to fight the impulse to be a shit, I guess. Like that there is something that comes with that kind of money and power. And I suppose because like even without asking, sometimes when you have a lot of money and then you have some degree of celebrity or whatever, wherever your power is coming from, with being so financially like solvent, um
Mm-hmm.
that people will sort of like cave to you, and then you find yourself expecting it all the time, like
Yeah.
you start to kind of resent and hate the people for giving into you so easily. Like, actually, funny enough, in watching Honora, there's Vanya, the rich Russian kid, and Honora go to Vegas, on a whim with their friends, and go into this Las Vegas fancy casino hotel, and then the guy that's like sort of like running the place is like, oh yeah, of course, no, we'll get your room, there's this like, oh, it's it's Vanya, his family is so rich and powerful, and they just immediately start groveling.
Mm.
And then there's this
Mm-hmm.
expectation that comes, well, you expect the groveling all the time, which I think was the point that the celebrity was saying, is like you find yourself becoming an asshole. And so, yeah, it's, I can't conceive of that degree of wealth. And like I've said, like in my job, I've had some proximity just out of, working as a dominatrix, as a sex worker, whatever, and sort of observing it from a certain distance.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't conceive of it. It's beyond my comprehension to have that amount of money. And also the illusion that comes with it. This weird idea that you are powerful, that you can pretty much buy anything, and that kind of creates a sense of invincibility, and I don't know, brings with it a kind of just general, I don't know, disgust towards regular people, or
Mm-hmm.
that they are somehow really less than, and you're just so bored and jaded. I don't know.
Yeah.
um
And you're separate. You're just so separate from them,
Yeah.
looking down and yeah, like invincible and above the law. And like I'm thinking about Diddy and all that stuff, and protected somehow. Um, yeah, yeah, it's inconceivable to me too. There's a moment. Do you know that the director of? So there's a couple of cameos in it. Well, there's the one of the Cannibal Holocaust guy, and then there's in Hostel, the first one. Takashi Miike, the director of Audition,
Mm-hmm.
is in it, and he's the businessman that's leaving the warehouse when Paxton pulls up, and he asks him,
Oh,
"Yeah,"
okay.
and he's like, what's it like in there?" And he says back to him, "Be careful, you could spend all your money in there."
Oh my gosh, which is so scary when you think about what's going on in there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all he can say about it. And that sort of, yeah, it's like that sociopathic kind of like, we are in this club, you guys are our prey, you guys are our livestock,
Yeah.
and that's really how we see you, like concretely.
And honestly, it's then you think about like Diddy fucking chasing Cassie down the hallway and beating the shit out of her.
Yep.
And then you think about the people that he just would bring in. Like I think I told you I was working on this softcore uh project, and the guy that I was working with was talking about how he had been paid by Diddy to fly to New York to fuck one of Diddy's girlfriends for Diddy so Diddy could watch.
Whoa.
And it's like, yeah, it was just this weird thing where he got booked for this thing. And this was a while ago, before everything kind of went down. But like, I was like, what was he like? And he goes, he's just sat there.
Wow.
And I was like, did you have to do any, like, was it crazy sex? He goes, no. I think it was just, I don't know. It wasn't a cuck thing because like Diddy
Uh-huh.
didn't want to be, sort of like made fun of, like in the way that you do in these like cuck scenarios where you kind of like try to emasculate the person watching. He just wanted to watch. I don't even know. I think he was probably, if I had to guess, Diddy was probably more into the idea that he could basically buy and orchestrate the whole experience versus actually needing anything out of the observation. And if it's true that Diddy like rapes, he probably gets his biggest kick out of having sex with people against their will or while they're drugged or whatever. But I don't know.
Wow.
But yeah, it's
Huh.
it really is that kind of like I can buy my way out of this. I can buy anything, and just the dehumanization and the, I guess, God complex of inflicting suffering. And that the scary thing is with Hostel 1 and 2, I mean, sure, they are these really graphic horror movies, but the elite hunting club, it kind of exists in a way, you
Yeah.
know?
Right. Yeah.
And the victims are the people that tend to be, not in the same tax bracket as the elites.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about, like, it made me think, just my mind just kind of went to, this is a little bit of a tangent, but if you think about war, that's the exact same thing that has to happen. You have to dehumanize the enemy
Yeah.
in order, like to capture a journalist and to behead them. That requires you to divorce yourself from your shared humanity for sure. Um, and how religion can drive that too.
Hmm.
Religion, or just these fundamentalist kinds of views. You're bad, we can exterminate you. Yeah, like vermin. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's really disturbing. And I mean, it wouldn't have been that. See, that's what makes this. That's what makes Hostel so kind of satisfying when the people fight back. Because in these other films where it's just a sort of like nameless, faceless, Jason
Yeah.
or Michael Myers, or it's like it's not as there's not it's not as like good versus evil. It's a
Yeah.
little bit like less you're like rooting for people to escape, but you're also in this. I think this really captures the class kind of frictions that exist, right? Like we're more than happy to see these like wealthy torturers get their comeuppance, and they do, and it's really gratifying. So I love that too about the revenge aspect of these movies when they can get it. Yeah. Do you want to hear some of my favorite quotes?
Please.
Okay. I wrote a bunch of them down. Okay. Oh, by the way, you remember the scene? I found out all this stuff just from reading articles, by the way. I didn't. But you know that part in the first Hostel where they get seduced by the women and they're kind of making out with Natalia and Svetlana?
Yeah.
The song that's playing is a song from Wicker Man, and it's Willow's song, and it's like a siren song in Wicker Man.
That's so.
Isn't that so cool?
Dude, anybody that wants to write Eli Roth off. The guy is a fan of horror, and he is quite detail oriented, and he's very precise about his choices. You know what I mean?
And this is why people love horror. We love the conventions. We love our I mean, really, I don't know anybody else who I've like a handful of friends who are horror fans, and we get so much enjoyment out of talking about horror movies, sharing stuff about horror movies. And I feel like the directors, like Eli Roth, also they like play to that. They're like speaking to us through these choices, and it's like a wink, and it feels so intimate. I love it. But the one thing he said that I thought was, one of my favorite lines is, remember in the beginning when Eli Roth has that cameo and they're like in the thing in Amsterdam and they're taking bong rips and Eli Roth's like a stoner, and then it cuts back to the guys and they're like, are there any fucking Dutch people in Amsterdam? So good. Like the Americans abroad trope.
Right.
Yeah, it's really fun. And then the other one is, oh God, this is a really sad one. Remember when Paxton goes to the police? He goes, and before he gets brought to the torture chambers, he kind of goes to the police and he's talking to them about his missing friends, and the police ask him, where are you from? And he says California, and the police officer looks at him with just like sadness, and he said, oh, you're so far from home.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, gut punch. It's just a very poignant moment.
What was the last movie that Eli Roth did? Wasn't it Thanksgiving?
Yes, but I loved Green Inferno.
Yes.
I saw Thanksgiving. I didn't really love it that much.
I didn't love it. It was fun, but like it wasn't like Hostel 1 and Hostel 2, which again, not everything has to be like heavy, but it was fun.
Ooh. I know we have to stop soon, but what about I also loved this. Did you see that movie with the Airbnb rental? What's it called?
Yes, The Rental.
No, I loved that one. But the one with the one that gets weirder and weirder and weirder, and it has the
Barbarian.
She goes in. Yes, Barbarian. So remember how there was the homeless guy in Barbarian, and he kept walking by and saying things, and she didn't really listen to him because she didn't give him any credit for. Yeah. So they do the same thing in Hostel. That guy that she meets at the Harvest Festival.
I could have saved you.
Yes. I could have helped you. And he was like, yes, but she just ignored him because he looked goofy.
Yeah.
And that was another moment. I think he's a master of that in these movies, like these little decision points, that lead them further down the.
Well, you can see too that the townspeople have no choice.
Yeah.
Because he ends up when you see him later on, and he doesn't let her into the truck, and he looks like he's had the shit beat out of him.
And he's leaving town with all his stuff.
Yeah, and he's letting her know, like, I could have, like, he has to go. He can't. You don't have much choice in that. And then what's interesting too is that now that she is because she had to buy her way out. She had to join the club.
I know, and the best part is that where she gets her tattoo is a tramp stamp.
Yes, I saw that. I thought about that. I thought about that.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. She killed him, and I wondered I wondered what that meant.
Yeah, exactly. And it's what I love about rewatching these movies is that that's something that it didn't occur to me until very recently. It's like, so what now?
Yeah.
She's got the hound tattoo. She may be able to buy Slovakia, but she's certainly not the richest part of that club.
No.
And that is the thing. It's like,
Are you ever
yeah,
free?
yeah. And she can't tell anybody. Like her life is she's fucked in a way. I mean, I remember like being very like happy that she had her moment, but like what does the rest of her life look like now? Because she can't tell anyone. Anybody that recognizes the hound stamp probably has one too. Ah, it's so crazy. It's extra scary. It's extra scary thinking about that.
It is. It is extra, extra scary. Have you seen part 3?
No.
Okay, you have to watch it because well, yeah, you have to. I think you should. I thought it was totally entertaining, and when I looked at the reviews actually recently,
Mhm.
I think it was like the highest rated of the 3.
You've got to be kidding me.
And people hate it. People are like, that's the stupidest movie. I actually really enjoyed it. I thought it was totally enjoyable. The kills were really interesting, and they don't.
Who
do
directed it? Because it wasn't Eli Roth.
No, but in this one they take, I forget his name, but what they do in this one is they take it another level. Like they focused in the first one not much at all on the people who were actually committing the killings. The second one they gave you a little more of a window into the bidders and their lives and whatever.
Sure.
And then this one it's in Las Vegas, and so when they get kidnapped and brought to the location where they're going to be killed, it's actually like a nightclub situation where people are sitting there in a dark room with watching it's not a screen, but they're watching through a glass window and weighing in about what to do to the person that they're going to kill. And so they're watching it unfold and they're weighing in and bidding about how to murder the person. And so it's like a show. So it's interesting, and they have couple little twists that are really fun. But I definitely recommend it.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah, but they play with the whole thing of the stamp, because in order to get into anywhere in the structure in the building, you have to use your tattoo as like a thing to get the doors to open.
Oh, okay.
So you can imagine what might take place if someone doesn't have one and they need one, how they get it.
Right. Well, this was a fun discussion.
So fun.
A nice little break from our usual content. Although we will be back next week with the discussion of Casey Anthony.
That's gonna be fun.
Yep. Oh my heavens.
So I guess this is it. And please, listeners, if you like our podcast, please review us and follow us on Instagram at Secret Passage Podcast. And I guess that's it till now. For now, yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. See you guys next week.
See you next week.